Hello, welcome back to Planet 40k Tyranids. We've got another bite-sized review for today for one of the Tyranid monsters within the faction. Now today we're going to be talking about one of the fast attack options, which is the Dimachaeron. You're not going to find this unit's datasheet in the Tyranids Codex, you'll find this in the Imperial Armor Compendium book. Now you're going to be able to purchase this from Forge World, because yeah, it's a Forge World model. So we're going to be going through the datasheets, going through the stratagems, maybe talk about some Hive Fleets on top of that, and also do a little bit of maths for the damage output. So let's begin with the datasheet. Coming in at 14 power level or 280 points. So it's got a 12-inch movement, it's got weapon skill and ballistic skill of a 3+, strength and toughness 7, 18 wounds, attack 6, leadership 8 and a 3+ armor save. Now the Dimachaeron does have a degrading stat line. When it goes to half wounds, which will be 9 wounds, the movement drops to 9-inch movement, the weapon skill and ballistic skill go to a 4+ from a 3+. Now when it drops to 4 wounds or less, not where you want to be really, but your movement now is only 6 inches and the weapon skill and ballistic skill is now a 5+. So much harder to hit with this thing when it has been degraded to its bottom tier. As for the faction keywords of note, well, there's only really the main one, which is the monster keyword, which is going to interact with quite a lot of things, especially the Hive Fleet stuff, but yeah, we'll go over that later in this video. Now for the war gear, the Dimachaeron is equipped with a massive scything sickle talons and a scything tail. So let's begin with the massive scything sickle talons. So they're a melee weapon, strength +1, -3 AP, and the damage is D3 +3, and you also get to reroll all the hit rolls. Pretty good. Now that damage being D3 +3 is an average of 5 damage, potentially 6, potentially 4, but you are hitting on a 3+ to begin with 6 attacks, and the standard strength is strength 7, so when you get it to strength +1, making it strength 8, which obviously assists you if you're going up against toughness 7 monsters or vehicles, or even toughness 4 infantry models, because you're wounding them on a 2+. Then on top of that, you've got the scything tail, which is strength user, so you're now strength 7, -3 AP, 2 damage, only 1 single attack, but it's an additional attack, so you've got your 6 standard attacks with the talons, and then 1 additional attack with the tail. This one's a little bit of a bonus. Okay, it's still 2 damage, so it's pretty good. You're likely wounding on a 3+, and -3 AP, 2 damage, yeah, not too bad at all. In fact, let's go over some mathematics about what to expect in terms of damage output when you're going up against certain toughnesses. So if you're going up against a toughness 5, 6 or 7 kind of model, so the total amount of attacks here is 6, and when you're hitting on a 3+ and re-rolling those attacks, you're going to get on average 5.3 hits out of that. Now when you're wounding toughness 5, 6 or 7, expect about 3.5 wounds to go through, and almost 3 of them will go unsaved because of the -3 AP. Of course, invulnerable saves are going to make a little bit of difference with the maths, but provided there's no invulnerable saves here, yeah, almost 3 unsaved wounds, which will give you an average total damage of 14.8, close to 15 damage from those 6 attacks, which is pretty good. Going up against light vehicles, even heavy vehicles, that's going to do a bit of work bracketing them to a lower bracket. Now if you were to go against standard infantry, toughness 4 or even less than toughness 4, you've still got 6 attacks, you've still got 5.3 hits when you're re-rolling all your hit rolls. This time you're causing around 4.4 wounds because you're wounding on a 2+. That brings the unsaved wounds stat to 3.7 on average, giving you a total damage of 18.5. But to be honest, against that kind of infantry, the damage isn't really what's important because every single attack is likely going to remove a model. So you're likely removing 4 models with these attacks. So even though removing 4 models is not too bad, I mean if you're going up against, again, Space Marines is an easy example. Taking away 4 intercessors, you're looking at roughly 80-85 points from those 4 models. Whereas if you're taking 14, nearly 15 wounds off a toughness 7 vehicle, that's going to be a lot more points than 80. It could be 150, it could be 250. It's much more beneficial to go up against the tougher units than it is to go up against infantry units. So right, so that's the war gear. Let's get into the abilities. The first one is the Leaper Killer. So it's got a 5+ invulnerable save, and in addition, when it makes a normal move, advanced move, fallback move or charge move, you can move horizontally and vertically through models and terrain features. You just can't of course finish on top of another model or its base. So it's effectively like having the fly keyword, except it's not like the fly keyword. The pros to this would be you can charge through terrain and not have to actually scale over the terrain feature. Maybe it's a 6-inch ruin, whereas a unit with the fly keyword will have to go 6 inches up and then horizontally to the unit, because the vertical limit on the fly keyword still actually applies in the charge phase. Whereas with the Leaper Killer ability, you're literally going through them horizontally, going through models, going through terrain, so it's not going to count. However, there is a downside to having no fly keyword within the datasheet, which is this thing cannot attack aircraft. That's the only downside to this. Yes, it can move horizontally, yes, it can move vertically, go through models and stuff, but you can't attack aircrafts. It's also got the Death Rose ability, so when it is destroyed on a 6+, the closest enemy unit within 3 inches suffers 3 mortal wounds. And it's also got the Thorax Spine Maul. After the model has made its close combat attacks, before consolidating, select one enemy unit within engagement range, excluding aircraft again. The model's player rolls a d6 and adds their model's strength characteristic to that d6 roll. If the result is equal to or less than this model's strength characteristic, which is strength 7, then their models are going to suffer d6 mortal wounds. So even though our ideal unit isn't infantry models, because we've already kind of gone over the maths earlier in this video, if you do get caught up with infantry models, you've still got the option of having this, because even units that have got a strength value of 4, they still need to roll a 3+ to actually ignore this ability. Anything less than a 3+, they're going to suffer d6 mortal wounds. If they're strength 3, they're going to need a 4+. Of course, the higher the strength, the more difficult it is to actually get this ability to go off. But it's a nice extra bonus that you wouldn't always expect every round. And the last ability is the Digestion Spine. If an enemy unit was destroyed as a result of the model's Thorax Spine Maw ability, at the end of that turn, this model gains the ability until the end of the battle, which is Regenerative Physiology. Effectively, it's a 5+ feel no pain save. Any wounds that are lost on a 5+, that wound is not lost. Absolutely perfect. Normally we've got to spend a psychic ability such as Catalyst from one of our Psycho models to have this on our units, but this guy can have it as standard once he removes a model with the Thorax Spine Maw. So maybe that means you want to try and get hold of some light infantry to begin the game. They're your first target, some light screens, and hopefully you'll get this 5+ feel no pain save for the rest of the game. Right, so that's the data sheet. There's also the adaptive physiologies that are available to the Dimachaeron because it's a monster. Now, to be honest with you, all of these options are pretty worthy except for the Dermic Symbiosis, because he already has a 5+ invulnerable save. There's no need to give him a 4+, but all of the other options are definitely usable. For example, Synaptic Enhancement, giving him Synapse, and that will of course interact with one of our secondaries from the No Mercy No Respite list, which is Synaptic Insight, where you've got a kill tally for units that are destroyed by Synapse model. So of course if you're giving him the Synapse keyword, he will also be involved with that secondary objective. Another one I quite like is the Predator Instincts, being able to perform heroic interventions if they were a character, and they can do this 6 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically. Getting some extra attacks in on your opponent's turn could be really key, and it's also going to give you a little bit of board control because your opponent is not going to go within 6 inches of this model in their own turn, which can push them away from certain key areas. So let's talk about some Hive Fleets that are going to be available and work well with the Dimachaeron. The first one is the Behemoth Hive Fleet. Of course, they are the melee Hive Fleet. Getting a +1 to the strength on the charge or heroic intervention, that makes him strength 9, so that even toughness 8 models are not safe against this guy. And also you're going to get a rerollable charge roll on top of that, which I think is going to be really key. There's also Hive Fleet Leviathan. Synapse monsters can't be wounded on less than a 4+. Now we already kind of alluded to it a minute ago with the adaptive physiologies. You will need to give him this Synaptic Enhancement physiology in order to make him a Synapse monster, because he doesn't have the Synapse word as standard. So if you want to make use of this ability, you will need to pay those extra points from the adaptive physiologies. You'll also want to swap out the adaptive for one of the hyper adaptive options from the feed by morphologies or the hunt by morphologies, because he's already re-rolling his hit rolls anyway, so you won't be needing that one. But this is also another way to get the heroic intervention as if it was a character with the ambush predators from the hunt by morphologies, which is probably the one that I would select, or optionally the adrenalized onslaught, give him an extra 3 inches to his consolidation move. As for some stratagems that are worth mentioning here, a couple of battle tactic stratagems to begin. Ferocious Appetite. For your Hive Tendril monsters, they're going to be able to reroll all their wound rolls. Now bear in mind, this thing already rerolls all the hit rolls, so for one command point you're doing the exact same with the wound rolls. That could be absolutely massive when you're talking about strength 8 or strength 9 with a lot of AP and a lot of damage. The Indomitable Monstrosity is another one, which is one command point used on a Hive Tendril monster. Very similar to the Leviathan Hive Fleet, you can't be wounded on less than a 4+. It doesn't need the Synapse keyword to use this stratagem like the Leviathan Hive Fleet does. So if you didn't want to play the Leviathan Hive Fleet and you didn't want to give him the Synapse keyword with the adaptive physiology, one command point and you can give him that ability until the end of the phase. And then one from the Epic Deed stratagems, done in your charge phase on a Hive Tendril monster again. Once you finish your charge move, select one enemy unit within engagement range of the monster and you roll a d6. Now unfortunately it doesn't have the Horn Chitin keyword, so on a 2, 3 or 4 the unit will suffer d3 mortal wounds, and on a 5+ they suffer 3 mortal wounds. So if you want to throw out some extra damage before you even start doing your attacks, that's the way to do it. Right, before getting into the pros and cons, I've also got to point this out that with the obscuring terrain rules, they're going to interact slightly different with the Dimachaeron, simply because he's got 18 wounds or more. So as you can see here, aircrafts and models with a wounds characteristic of 18 or more can be seen normally, even if there is a terrain feature in between it and its firing model. Note that the reverse is not true, so it can't fire back, not that it's got range attacks anyway, but your opponent can see your Dimachaeron with line of sight, even though there is obscuring terrain in the way. Right, so let's get on to the pros and cons for the Dimachaeron. Start with the pros. Movement of 12 inches, 18 wounds. He's got a 5+ invulnerable save, makes him very resilient. He's moving through models as well as terrain features as if they weren't there. He's pretty nasty in melee, D3 plus 3 damage is pretty nice, and he's re-rolling those hit rolls as well. The Thorax Spine Maw throws out mortal wounds on top of that, especially if your opponent rolls low for that, and that will of course gain a 5+ feel no pain save for the rest of the game. And finally, the adaptive physiology options are available. As for the cons, of course he's got a degradable stat line. With 18 wounds, you've got to expect that. He's only toughness 7, whereas other monsters in the codex are toughness 8, so not as resilient as them, although he does have an invuln save. He's got no option of the adrenal glands and no option of the toxin sacs, and he's got no ranged attacks either with his war gear. Other monsters in the codex are now very good. Since the codex came out, we've had a massive boost to all of our monsters in the codex, so the Dimachaeron kind of has lost its place slightly because the other monsters have caught up with it. He's also quite pricey at 280 points. And finally, because he's got 18 wounds or more, he can be seen through obscuring terrain as long as there's line of sight. Right, so for the Planet 40k rating today for the Dimachaeron, I'm going to be going with a Planet 40k rating of 3.5 out of 5. So guys, that is it from me today. Make sure you are subscribing to the channel on your exits. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.